Welcome to our fourth panel of the day. We're sort of moving through a whole range of different themes. You'll be glad to know that all of these sessions are being recorded, so they will be accessible later on. So this panel is going to discuss preparing your child for a new secondary school and supporting them during the transition to senior school. My name is Fiona Mackenzie. I'm Head of Education at Carfax Education, an education consultancy, and I'm delighted to welcome a wide array of talent with me today. We have Frances Powell, who is the Head of Secondary at the Arbor School. We have Jan Stipik, who is the Principal of Regents International School. We have Samudrika, who is the Educational Supervisor at the Senior Secondary School at GEMS New Millennium in Al Khail. And we have Richard Cranston, the Deputy Head of Emirates International School in Jumeirah. I think this is a really big topic. There's so much I think that we could say, and we've only got half an hour. So I think it would be quite helpful if we could sort of divide it into sort of some subsections. So I was thinking that it would be good to think about the advice we can give parents on some of the following topics: on the kind of studying, the kind of academic expectations, on the kind of socialization, the kind of making and breaking of friendships, the involvement in extracurricular activities, settling in at school, and perhaps a little bit about how we deal with adolescents, because these families are going to be handing over their year 7 children to you, and then they're going to morph into these teenagers. And I think that can be quite an interesting and sometimes scary journey for a parent, whereas you as professionals have all got a range of experience around that. So if we kind of look first of all at the kind of the level of work. So how, Richard, how do you think you can start helping parents to transition, or children to transition from that level of work in a sort of primary environment into a secondary environment? Because it is quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think the most important thing to understand is when students are stepping up from primary to a high school, there's a different level of expectation. It doesn't mean it's better or worse, it's just different. And it's important for parents and our young people to understand that when they come into it as well. I mean, I'm speaking from experience. I came to Dubai last year, my first year, and I brought both my children with me. My daughter was just going into year 7 and my son was going into year 10. And so she was coming into a new country, a new school, a new curriculum as well. And it was really important for me that as a parent that I was understanding of what those expectations were going into that setting. The reality really is that as parents, we are creatures of habit, and it's what we know. So when you're coming from a primary situation, you've been there for a number of years. You have your teacher and your head of year that you get to know very well, year on year as well. You tend to have the same friendship groups year on year. So that transition can be quite difficult, but not only for the students, but for parents as well. I mean, we always look, I'm sure many schools are the same, but we look at our parents as partners in what we do. And we try and foster that really important, that open line of communication. But when you're coming from a primary setting where you're used to having that same teacher and that same one point of contact, and maybe that same head of year, to high school where they have 8, 9, 10 different subject areas, different teachers to be involved, it's important to have that open line of communication and understanding that if there is an issue, who do they contact? And who's the earliest point of contact they can have? And to make sure they understand that it is, again, the open line of communication, and they're very much part of that process too.
So I think when they're sort of at the early stages, I can see how that's absolutely relevant when they're there. When they're at the early stages of that, you know, when they're trying to choose the school, Frances, you obviously have some who just progress through your school, but others who are coming in. How do you kind of set that expectation?
Yeah, and I think it's incredibly important when we're looking at a child's transition to remember that every child is an individual, and every child's journey will be individual and personal to them. So even as a parent, your journey into secondary school will be very different from a child in today's culture, in today's society here in Dubai. So when we're helping our students progress, we ensure we look at them as a one, as opposed to one whole cohort, and we make sure that we provide that personalised package for them, whether they're coming in from another country or even just moving up from the primary school. So that is engaging with the parents, as you said, making sure that parents are aware of what it looks like and trying to be proactive with it so that they don't have to ask, who do I contact, where do I go for this, but actually putting it all out there so that parents feel that sense of security, and working with parents in terms of how they frame their conversation. because I think the language a parent uses about it being an exciting new challenge to ask questions, to feel positive, to feel engaged with the process, as opposed to it's scary and are you going to be okay, actually reframing that, I think, has a massive impact on that child and their ability to settle and transition through.
I think that's such a good point, that actually so much of this does rest with the parents and the tone that they kind of set. Sandrika, what advice would you give to parents when they're kind of talking to their children about this kind of transition?
I would definitely tell them to be very open in their conversations with their kids. So while, of course, establishing a liaison with the new school, with the teachers, with all the concerned adults, I think for every parent it is absolutely important to know what comprises their child's well-being. So they should have very regular conversations, maybe well in advance, so that the child is kind of groomed into this zone wherein accepting a new school, maybe a new curriculum, maybe a new country, whatever it is, all of these factors need to be knit into that conversation. So, in fact, one of the things that at NMS, which really stands apart, is the fact that we have a parent buddy system as well. So apart from the students having a buddy, they have parents also to buddy with other parents. So we have orientations where we lay down the expectations, wherein we tell them who to liaison with and for what. But at the same time, there are other parents who you could reach out to. So that's something which also comes in handy.
That must be very reassuring for parents, I think, to have that sort of, person who's already kind of been through the process.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and with Regional International, when do you think is the kind of optimum time to start introducing your child to the concept that they're going to be moving up? And when do you start kind of wanting to engage with families and parents?
So I think what we've been hearing is the importance of the transition both for the students as well as the parents. I think that's coming clearly here. I think, first of all, we can look at it from 2 points. One is on a school level. So for our Year 7 teachers, the Grade 6 teachers, to really backward plan in terms of what do students need to know? Where do they need to be by the end of Year 6 or Grade 5? So really that sort of planning, that sort of vertical planning, making sure that the school knows and it can prepare the students as smoothly as possible for a transition. So really, in a way, I always see Year 6 as the whole year is a bit of a transition. Obviously, you start easing them into it, but by, certainly term 3, there really should be very much thinking and sort of almost running routines, daily routines, as a bit of secondary if you can. I think an element that we haven't fully touched on is the actual transition itself, experiencing, spending a full day at secondary, going back to the concept of dealing with different teachers, because all of a sudden they have gotten to know the one teacher. All of a sudden now they have to navigate different personalities. So I think that's important as well. So when do we find the day? I think different schools may have different times. It depends how it fits with your calendar. Running it too early is probably the students are not ready. Running it too late, you're sort of running a risk of running it too late. So depending on your school year, I would say May could be a good time when there is a full day of transition into secondary.
Okay, and I can see how that kind of works when the children are coming up, because you can make them very familiar with the kind of the landscape that they're going into. But I'm interested to come back to you, because obviously your child started fresh out of the block on this one. So how did you start that preparation, and how did the school you were going to kind of manage that?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. I mean, I accepted the position, I think, in about April time, and then very quickly we were put in contact with the head of pastoral in the school. And I had my son and my daughter. So my daughter went into Year 7, my son went into Year 10. And they were then also assigned with their heads of year, and then with a buddy, so a student that they knew on the first day of term. Now, that wasn't just an experience just for me as I was coming in as the incoming deputy head. It's what we do as a school, and I'm sure other schools will do something similar. And I think it's really important, because when we have students coming into and parents coming into a new school, a new situation, the motivation for the school change can be very different, and it's be very unique to each individual family. So it's important to understand that motivation with that family and looking at what you can do to make that transition as smooth as possible. So on that bearing all of that in mind, it's really personalising that transition element. So, as Jan said, quite rightly so, if you're coming through the school, you have those transition policies in place and that element coming through, and you know what's working from one phase to the next. But you've got students and families maybe coming from outside of the country, maybe from a different curriculum to a different school. So you put those practices in place. Maybe if they're coming to a new curriculum, you have to put that curriculum planning in place so they really understand, have a full knowledge of what they're getting themselves into. Really, it's about not making it scary. It's about really trying, and I think as Frances said, using that framing of language as well. But also it can be the unknown much more for parents as for, I mean, children are much more resilient than we give them credit for sometimes. And coming to that new environment, I mean, we very much say we have a buddy system, we have their homeroom teachers, we have their heads of year, all of which they're put in contact with prior to coming to the school. On the first day they come to school, they'll meet those people face to face. So it is a familiarity to a point. We also quite regularly will have follow-up feedback forums and feedback with our parents to see how we are doing, having that responsive to them, because again, it's very much about that personalised learning experience for the child, and it's important that we are paving that way for them, and also that parents feel that they've got an inward view of what's really happening also, and if we can do something better to support them, we have to be all ears to reflect that as well.
So yes, what you're saying very much is that you're welcoming the child and the parents into your community. So
exactly.
It's about kind of, you know, setting the kind of scene for that.
Yeah.
So Sandra, so tell me how your school manages that kind of transition, particularly for children coming in from outside. Do you get them all in for the day, or how does it look like in
So
New
what
Millennium?
we usually do is we have an orientation. The homeroom teacher sits the parents and the child through an entire, you know, the academic rigor, the extracurricular activities, well-being, you know, surveys and whatever we do through the year. So they are actually briefed about all of this. They're taken through, you know, for a campus tour by students. And of course a buddy is assigned to the child. On the first day itself, the head of section or the supervisor would have an interaction with the child, kind of take the child through what are the expectations of the school, how the child would find things different at NMS from other schools, you know. And of course, since the academic rigor is so high, we do see that children often struggle to, you know, get up to speed with those things. So we have a lot of these intervention classes, you know, lessons which are held after school, wherein teachers sit. Sometimes we even have children who join mid-term. So in that case, you know, it's easy to kind of create that dent on confidence. But in order to take these children through the year, in keeping in mind the well-being and all of those other aspects, we have a lot of support that is kind of provided to the child. Whether it's a child who's coming in from India, often we even have need for EAL, for instance, you know, English as an additional language, because children come from areas like Ethiopia, Uzbekistan. We have kids who come in with very limited knowledge of English. So in that case, we also need to look at how our curriculum can be kind of modified, adapted, and of course, how we can embed English into, you know, their system in a manner that they can take up IGCSE as, you know, this curriculum of their choice.
So it's really about being very familiar with the kind of intake coming in, isn't it? Really having a good knowledge of that and know, because I think, as you said, it's a very personal journey.
And if I can jump in, I think, you know, what can we find that makes the transition for them smooth is also the one point of contact. And so the concept of a form tutor or a homeroom advisor, somebody who's there at the, you know, in the morning. So I think that scheduling bit, when they actually have the morning time. And I think it's important that it's a morning time, because it sort of gives, you know, these 11-year-olds, regardless where they come from, time with just one adult that they get to know. And again, that can serve as that point of contact. So in a way, I think it's a continuation of the primary approach, which can then phase off as the students and the parents navigate through secondary.
Absolutely, I think that's true. So you're making that transition as easy and familiar as possible. It's not too much of a shock. I think one of the kind of areas that, you know, you're moving from a very cozy one kind of class environment into suddenly you're moving from classroom to classroom. You've got lots of different children and you're in different classes. So that very strong friendship group that you've made perhaps in your primary years suddenly becomes much more fragmented. Frances, how do you help children navigate that?
I mean, I think it provides such excellent opportunities to actually explore new areas of the curriculum, new extracurriculars, also to make new friends and to actually go beyond that one group. And we can all organise, I'm sure we all do, a very successful transition day. You know, the kids come in, they have a great time, but it's about being able to do that consistently and sustainably. So we talk about routines and relationships. Relationships do come first. I don't believe you, and I wouldn't want children to have that successful academic career without putting their well-being first, making sure that we're looking after them as people, but also making sure they're developing the tools to have that self-awareness of themselves and their own resilience. And then building in those relationships. Now, we do have small class sizes, so our tutor groups are only 16 students in a tutor group, and they see them twice a day. So they see them in the morning, but they also see them for mindfulness later in the day, and then they go into different teaching groups. So we are very fortunate that that is very much part of our ethos, is smaller groups, so we all really know them as individuals, but also routines, like you say, they're jumping from one specialist subject to another to a different teacher. Everyone is coming in with different feelings and different sort of temperature checks of how they feel emotionally as well. So we try and make sure that we have a consistent approach to the start of the lesson. I'm sure, you know, task on entry, making sure that they're ready, making sure that we're following those different routines for them so that students actually feel comfortable, even though they're going for different lessons, that actually there's something which feels a little bit similar to them. And also encouraging parents to understand this is part of growing up. This is the exciting part. This is where you get to actually find your passion, find your purpose in life, to be able to go on to your GCSE options, your A-levels, your university career. So I think it's important that, yes, it is a big change, but actually this is an amazing stepping stone as you go into adult life, and making sure everyone is aware of that as well.
Yeah, that sort of 7 to 9 is almost the kind of golden years, isn't it? Because you haven't got all the pressure of exams and things, but you've got all the fun of exploring subjects and making new friends. I'm really intrigued, just coming back to you as a parent. Sorry to kind of picking on this, but I do think, you know, what advice did you give your daughter when she was coming into this new cohort of people about how to make friends? Because you know, she would have left a really lovely group of friends behind. I'm sure that would have been a challenge for her.
She did leave a lot of very good friends back in Northern Ireland when she came over, but I'm very fortunate in that my daughter doesn't need too much guidance, to be honest, to make new friends. But again, it is very much down to, I mean, all our young people have their own individual personalities and outlooks, and it's really about understanding who they are and putting the practices in place for that. I mean, I was very fortunate, I think, in many international schools, because we do have like a transient community at times within Dubai. Our children are quite adept at bringing new people into the classroom and genuinely interested in others and hearing what they have to say. And also it's where our form tutor or homeroom teachers come into play as well. It's about celebrating that difference and what that different experience brings to the classroom. So really, to get people to settle in well is really embracing them into the fold by getting them to understand, like, where did you come from, and encouraging them to open up about their own experience and how that fits into where they are as well. I think probably one of the most important things for all our young people and parents to understand is that times will be challenging, and going into a high school or a secondary school experience, they're expected to be challenged, whether that's emotionally or academically as well, and the learning comes from how they deal with that and move on to the next phase. I think within primary and a lot of education, we hear the concept of a growth mindset as well, and sometimes I think we get a little bit bogged down with growth mindset, and sometimes I've heard people saying, well, it's about well, you learn from that and you grow and go again. But in terms of a growth mindset, it's not necessarily about taking from that and then having another go at it. It's about understanding where you need to develop, understanding that area where you need to make a difference, and then adjusting and then making that difference to go again, whether that is in terms of a personality clash with your classroom friends, whether that's with understanding some academic material within your classroom or working with your teachers. That's the concept, that it's okay to be challenged, but it's how you react to that.
I think that's such a good point, because I think, again, when you've had a sort of student in a primary environment and then it ups the game, that can be scary for a parent.
I was just going to add to that, because I really love that point of challenge, is school is the safest place to make mistakes. It's the safest place you can try something and not quite get it right, or say something and it's not quite the right thing to say. It's the safest place to be challenged, to put yourself out there, and creating that nurturing community this is the best time to try things out, to throw yourself into new opportunities within that school ground where we'll pick you back up, we'll work with you and help you again. And so I think that's really important to know that it's okay for them to fail, or it's okay for them to not get something quite right, because we're all here to support them and help them grow.
I think that's right, but I think also parents need encouraging to understand that mindset.
Well, I think I was going to say, I think we all share that philosophy. I wonder if all of the parents share that philosophy. And so it brings us back to actually running sessions for the parents. And so, what we do is we have Wisdom Wednesday sessions at Regent, and we invite parents. And it can be about parenting techniques. It can be about what does it mean to be a parent of a middle schooler, of a year 7, 8 child, and understanding that in some cases pretty much overnight, the same child was very happy and went through recollecting everything that happened in school in the car on the same day, just goes to, how did your day go? What did you do? Nothing. So, understanding that they need a little bit of space, that they will open up in their own time. So I think those parent sessions on parenting and understanding of actually we want them to try and fail as long as they learn from it, because that can be culturally different.
And I think it's quite a challenge here, because I think parents often parent in isolation here. There's no kind of older generation. There's not always that family support kind of network to do it. So that's fantastic to know that. And schools have a really vital role, I think, to play in that. How does that kind of manifest in the new millennium? How do you support parents to kind of learn about the challenges of adolescence that are kind of on the horizon?
So, as I mentioned to you, first, one point regarding these friends and how you've left your old friends behind. Honestly, I think social media has taken care of that. You are in touch with whoever you've left behind in your home country. So it's no longer the same as it was before. Of course, you don't meet on a regular basis, but you're definitely keeping in touch with everybody you've left behind. So I've seen that even with my kids who are as little as grade 1 and 2, they are very much in touch with all the people we've left behind in India, all their friends. So they're on WhatsApp and they're constantly sending their video chats and, all of those links. And I don't think, that transition really made much of a difference to them. They made new friends here, but at the same time, they're very much in touch with whoever they were friends with back home.
So the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. And as far as support to parents goes, at NMS, there's a very strong perennial body, so already well entrenched into the system. These parents basically have their WhatsApp groups, they have, they're on social media together. They kind of bring the new parents into the fold. They are a huge support to the entire school system, if you ask me. And this apart, we also have a specialized support wing for parents of students of determination. How they buddy with each other, they know each other's story, how they share, the manner in which they're giving care to their kids. So also we have something called a weekend communique, wherein the homeroom teacher prepares a sway. So that's individualized. Every class receives a sway from the homeroom teacher. The parents know exactly what's happening in the classroom. So that goes out every weekend. Parents are not exactly, left to their own device when they come and join us at New Millennium. They actually are given ample support, and they know exactly who to go to.
So communication and
Absolutely.
kind of engaging the community seems to be the key things. So just before we finish, I'm just going to ask you all the same question. I want to ask you, first of all, what's the one piece of advice you would give to parents, and one piece of advice you'd give to a child who's transitioning? So I'm going to start, Frances, with you, and then I'm going to start the other way around. Okay. So Frances, for a parent, first.
I would say for a parent, enjoy the process. Enjoy seeing your child grow up. You'll never go through this stage with them again. So enjoy it, be part of it, create that lovely moment of celebration as they move forward. And I'm
going to come back about the child. So Jan, for the parent, what advice would you give to a parent whose child is transitioning?
Yeah, I would say learn all about the ethos and the beliefs of the school, and then develop trust from there.
Okay, so learn about the ethos of school. Sandrika?
I would say that be open-minded, be open to the change. Don't have fixed ideas about anything. Go on with an open mind and you'll do well.
Okay. Richard.
I think similar to what everybody has said as well, and probably instead of not only enjoy the process but trust the process. We are experienced in what we do. I mean, all our schools, I'm sure, but we genuinely put the needs and the wants of all our children first and foremost there, and that's what we want to do. So I think parents need to trust us that we do have an understanding and want what's best for their child just as much as they do.
Now for the child, what piece of advice, and obviously you've just been through this, what piece of advice would you give to the child entering into year 7 or preparing for that transition? I
think the biggest thing really is, as much as they can be, is to be as open-minded as possible. I think they're coming from an environment, if they're coming from year 6 into secondary or high school, they have had a very much fixed experience of the one classroom with the teachers, and they need to understand and be adaptable. That is going to be different, and that's to be embraced, and that's what the joy of education is, and that's the joy of getting older and adapting and learning from those experiences, and that's really the most important thing.
So be open-minded.
I would tell kids to try their hand at everything. Take up each and every opportunity they get, and then make up their minds as to what they want to do later.
Okay, I love it. Embrace all opportunities.
Embrace confusion and then start making sense of the world.
Okay, embrace confusion and make sense of order. I like that.
Ask questions to help develop your passion and your purpose.
Okay, be confident about asking questions, be bold, don't kind of shy away from that. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think that's just been such an interesting session about, I think what's really interesting is it's the parents who need a lot of support in education here, and I think the children, as you say, are actually more resilient than we give them credit for. So my top takeaways are parents, be enthusiastic, be positive, engage the children in the process, and children be open-minded and be prepared to embrace everything. Thank you all so much for sharing all of that. So thank you again to Francis from the Arbor School. Thank you to Jan from Regis International School. Thank you to Samindrika from New Millennium School. And thank you to Richard from the Emirates International School in Jumeirah. I'm Fiona McKenzie from Carfax Education. We advise parents on a whole range of schools. If you'd like any further information, we're at the back. And all of these lovely people have stands here. Please go and find them, because I'm sure they'll be very happy to answer any questions and give more guidance and advice. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.